Good morning and hi everyone. Good morning and thank you for joining us. I want to introduce Arthi. Arthi is going to lead us in this wonderful session about AI. And Arthi is passionate about harnessing AI to drive innovation and solve complex challenges. With deep expertise in generative AI and large language models, LLMs, she has led the design and deployment of scalable AI solutions that create measurable impact across organizations. Arthi brings together strategy, technology, and hands-on execution to deliver meaningful outcomes from business transformation to AI-powered insights. She's also a committed mentor, helping teams unlock the full potential of AI and inspiring individuals and organizations to embrace new possibilities. So Arthi, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. And we are looking forward to get inspired by you and learn more about AI.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Thanks for having me here. It's my pleasure to be here and, basically talk through on the generative AI journey. Looking forward to the session.
Thanks, Arthi. And Shoshi, if you're okay with that, I would like to start with a question. Does that work?
Yep. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So my first question is, we've all witnessed the evolution of data analytics, spreadsheet, then SQL to machine learning, and now generative AI. What was that defining moment when it became clear that Gen AI wasn't just another tool in the toolkit, but a complete game changer?
I think it was not just a single breakthrough, Mary. It was decades of research that finally had a tip over around 2022, 2023, when OpenAI released ChatGPT for the general public, and everything changed then after. The real aha moment for many organizations was when they saw their non-technical business users. Just like a data scientist, they could generate insights on their own from their data. So it was like, a marketing analyst just coming in who has no coding experience, absolutely. They just come in, they ask a simple question in plain English, maybe why did their campaign not do well in a specific region? And within a matter of few seconds, you had a black box tool that could actually answer to the point to their question, not necessarily just answer the question, but in fact, give them very actionable recommendations that they can incorporate in their upcoming campaigns to be successful then after, right? Now, that's the shift we are talking about. So generative AI is not just making analytics better. It is, in fact, tearing down the wall between people and data. It's like going from it's like going from needing a translator to a foreign language, for example, and suddenly, you get proficient with it and you get completely fluent with it on your own. So that's actually the change we're talking about. So it's not just a tool from a toolkit, it's a complete game changer.
Makes sense. And Arthi, that leads me into my next question. Students who are just starting their journey, executives managing data strategies. From your perspective, can you paint a picture how Gen AI is transforming passive data graveyards into living, breathing intelligence?
So I always enjoy talking about this analogy, right? So think of traditional data like a library, right? Where all the books are like locked inside a vault, and you actually need secret keys like SQL or Python or data science degrees to unlock it. So it's like a static set of books inside a vault, and you really need secret keys to unlock it. But in the world of generative AI, the dynamics has completely changed. Imagine there is a knowledgeable librarian just sitting out there and who's able to just pick the right book for you from that library, and not just pick the book, he's also able to really, highlight the most important pages within that book that directly answers your question. And more than that, it's not just that one particular book. He is also able to connect the dots and bring to the table other books that are related to your topic, which you don't even know existed in the library and which you don't even know how to even ask for. That's the power that we are trying to build with generative AI. So it's no longer a static library of books or static content that's just sitting somewhere for you to come and explore, write queries to understand. The data is working on your behalf. It's actually trying to understand the patterns, connect the dots. It's basically trying to literally tell you data stories that you have been so far overwhelmed to even see and understand. So that's the power of generative AI we're talking about in this new era. In terms of statistics, there was a recent Forrester report that claims that nearly 60 to 73% of enterprise data is sort of locked and it's sort of dormant, which is not being even touched and analyzed. Now, the challenge generative AI is trying to solve is to unlock the dormant content. It's to unlock the dormant content for business value. And that's exactly the future we are looking towards.
So, Arthi, this is a great. Sorry.
Sorry, Shashi, you go.
Yeah. So, Arthi, this is actually a good segue to the next question. You talked about the data and the amount of data, right? So, most of our organizations are data rich, but insight poor. Sometimes they drown with data lakes, even data swamps, that they become, data swamps. And what we're trying to understand, if you can help us, is how the Gen AI rescue us from this paradox, that we have everything, but we understand not a lot.
You're absolutely right. There are several enterprises that are just sitting on mountains of data, right? And just a fraction of it even being utilized for business value. Just to give you some perspective in terms of some statistics, right? There was a recent report that the IDC published that claims that by the end of 2025, if you just put together the amount of data the world would curate, we are talking about nearly 175 zettabytes of data. And with just 0.3% of it even being consumed or even being analyzed. We are talking about zettabytes. When I say zettabytes, just to give you an analogy, it's like 1 followed by 21 zeros, which is, in other words, if you look at a rice grain, which is, if you compare a rice grain to a kilobyte, you're really talking about all the rice grains that will be cultivated across the globe all through the year. That's the amount of data we are talking about by the end of 2025. Together, of course, put together the world, all put together in one place. And that's the amount of data. And you're still looking at just 0.3% of it being utilized. That's the fraction of it that's getting utilized for analysis. That's one side of the person. The other side is Gartner published several reports recently where they claim that companies are burning a lot of money for managing their data in-house or even in the cloud. There's a lot of money that is being spent on managing this data. So it's like, you are owning an expensive smartphone. It's really expensive. You're paying so much money for it, but all you're doing with that smartphone is making just calls. You don't even know the kind of features that phone is actually having, and it's not even being unlocked. That's essentially what you're doing with your data and the amount of money you're spending into it. So, of course, there's definitely a big problem for all of us to solve. And generative AI exactly, steps in and helps us solve the problem, right? It not only makes analytics easier, it just has changed the way the very way we interact with data itself. Now, the paradigm in generative AI is it is built on top of semantic understanding, right? It's no longer constrained by human-crafted complex SQLs or predefined dashboards or reports anymore. It has the capacity to understand your data, understand the context, and more importantly, react dynamically based on the problem in hand. As an analogy, think of generative AI as a data archaeologist, who's skilled enough. All he needs is your data smart, right? A data archaeologist who can dig deep into your data swarms, understand the data, interpret the patterns, derive the context and build, take away all the noise, and finally build a very constructive treasure, a hunt out of it, right? That's the kind of capability we're talking about in generative AI. And I would say we are pretty early across several other advancements. Generative AI is a few years into the mix in here, but we are already seeing a lot of benefits, a lot of success that early adopters are claiming, right? We have reports that claim that early adopters of generative AI, data-driven in analytics, are in fact reporting 40% improvement to track the side measurable ROI, and that's very promising. And we are really looking forward for big evolution on how generative AI can turn the mountain of data, which is dormant, into real business value as we go into the following years.
That sounds amazing. And, we always have an issue when the data is not actionable. So it sounds like this is going to make it actionable for us as well.
Yeah, there's a very big promise from this technology. And of course, we have a lot of things to do to make it even real, but it's definitely promising. And we do have evidence from early adopters claiming that they have really seen tangible benefits from using generative AI in their data analytics.
Great, thank you. Another quick question similar to this is, when we talk about traditional analytics, we usually talk about what happened yesterday, right? What happened in the past through reports, dashboards. How does the Gen AI will help us to understand what to create tomorrow?
That's a great question, right? It's a typical, a very common question about descriptive analytics versus prescriptive analytics. So the way I would look at it is like traditional analytics is like a rear view mirror in your car. It's great to see where we came from, but it's not of much use for us to really look ahead. But on the other hand, generative AI, you can think of it like a GPS with predictive traffic baked into it, right? So it can not only tell us the path forward, it can also anticipate the traffic jams and sort of reroute us as we go through in real time so that we are successful in our end goal. Now, that's what is generative AI capable of doing. To exemplify further, if I have to take an example from the marketing domain, on the email campaigns, all of us know email campaigns, right? Traditional analytics maybe can tell you that, the open rates for one of your campaigns was 20% down. And it stops there. It just tells what. But generative AI, on the other hand, not only tells you that it was down, it also tells you why it was down by clearly crafting that, maybe the subject lines that you had used in your email did not work well on your targeted audience. And it doesn't stop there as well. It's also able to tell you how to improve it by giving you exactly 3 examples of subject lines that work with similar audiences from the past experience. So that's the power of using generative AI. It has the capability to connect the dots across different data sets, being structured or unstructured, and tie together a full picture for you, starting from the what, and then the why, and then the how, which is something that the traditional analytics is going to struggle to stitch the dots. So that's the benefit of deploying generative AI in our stacks.
I understand. That's amazing. While you were talking, I actually took it. You talked about the world of marketing, but I actually took it in my head to the world of operations. And it sounds like it can really help in any domain, I guess, right? To really find out the root causes and everything that happened.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Arthi, I had a few questions, but I know that Jody had her hand raised and Rajkumar had actually asked a question. Rajkumar, if you can unmute and ask your question directly to Arthi, that would be great. And then I will follow up with my question after Jody.
Sure, Sangeeta. So the question is, the moment we talk about data, right? So the first thing comes to our mind is security, because we take efforts in order to train the model and then feed the data, and especially it's customer data which is more secure. So how are we ensuring the security is actually in place because the moment the data get breached, it will be a more serious issue. Then how are we going to put together a kind of security rules to protect it?
That's a wonderful question. I think AI engineering is nothing new. Like, it's not something very different from software engineering, but there's an aspect of complexity that comes in when you bring in LLMs into the picture. So uh, it's a field by itself where we are working with responsible AI deployments. So if you're working with an AI deployment, it is our responsibility to make sure that every input and output is sort of sanitized for guardrails and rule sets, and ensure that we are adhering to, number one, ethics, to make it responsible in terms of what we have to really basically be advising our customers from all the hard work that happens behind the scene on your workflow. That is on the responsible deployments on the stack. But on the security side, so the pre-processing of data that needs to go into any AI deployment continues to be the same. It has to continue to follow the same rigor as we do with or without LLM. So all the goodies that we handle in terms of a typical data ingestion or the data fabric definition has to be in place and make it secure. So that's something that is a pre-processing that we have to anyway do before when it is made AI enabled. But post that, once it is sort of AI enabled and made available for an AI to surface, we need to make sure that the guardrails are in picture to ensure those rules are even adhered to, even during the inference stage when an AI is trying to answer those questions for end users. So it's an upgrade to whatever we have already been doing on the data security space, on the data landscape, to bring in another parameter of LLM to ensure that the ambiguity that it has in its reasoning is sort of controlled and not open-ended. Hope that answers your question.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthi and Rajkumar. Jody?
Yeah, so I just had a comment about a tangible use case that I recently saw in pharmaceutical, appropriate to your question about what are the tangible things and how we are actually demonstrating proven efficiency. So with pharmaceutical data, as you know, it's very, very costly to get drugs through the 5 phases of a release before humans are allowed to actually acquire it. So there's a lot of data that is held across each of these phases for multiple drugs. And as you know, there's a tendency to look for off-mark or off-package use cases for these drugs. So many of the large pharmacies, and in particular, I'm thinking of large pharmacies, I'm thinking of Pfizer, are actually taking and using large language models to churn through all that data to see what experimental data can be applied to other off-package uses for drugs. And the reason why that is phenomenal is the cost of getting a drug through clearance through FDA is billions of dollars. And most of the cost has to do with the lab work and the collection of data, the cleansing of the data, the curating of it, and the experimental protocols that are applied. So the fact that you can enable replicability and use the same data with proven data, proven utility to other drugs is a real boon for pharmaceuticals. So it could help us lower the cost of drugs coming into the market, which makes older people like myself very happy, because I'm out of the pocket. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the benefit, right? We are literally seeing the benefit across various sectors. Of course, healthcare and pharmaceuticals is one of the topmost industries benefiting from AI today.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And Arthi, my question is on breaking down barriers, right? I feel that AI has this great potential to break down knowledge barriers, right? And making data accessible to everyone, financial barriers and infrastructure barriers, pretty much anything, right? In those lines, my one question was, people are usually intimidated when it comes to technology. If you tell someone, well, I'm writing a SQL query or I'm writing, a complex piece of code, it intimidates them, right? how do you think Gen AI will help level this playing field, right? And the true mission being, as you mentioned, data being accessible to everybody.
Absolutely. I think when I started this conversation, I did bring through the aha moment that many organizations are actually seeing, right? So absolutely. Generative AI can be thought of as a translator between human and data, right? So you no longer need real uh, technical skills per se in terms of SQL or Python or SAS or R to really interact with your data. All you need is the curiosity. So it doesn't mean that we are replacing data scientists. They are very critical for us to really do in-house intelligence. But all we are saying is generative AI has opened up the floor for many others. It is empowering everyone to join the conversation to really make a difference. Gartner recently published a report where it claims that generative AI's new term is the new UI for analytics. So Gen AI can translate simple English to very effective insights. And you have tools that not necessarily come back as just words. They can also come back with real visualization. So you can actually bring back ad hoc visuals that talk about your data that are very, very effective for end users. So in fact, there was another report Microsoft recently published where they claimed that business users, I'm talking about business users and not technical users, who are actually making use of Gen AI tools to make data-driven decisions, we are 5 times more faster and successful when compared to those that literally wait for a human analyst to come and help them with content. So that's the world we are in. So generative AI is definitely bridging the gap.
That's amazing, Arthi. And you made a very critical point, right? Yes, it's great to put all these tools in the hands of business users, but always wrap it up with the support from data scientists and analysts to interpret it correctly, right? Because it's a context means everything in data. And you don't want it to be misinterpreted, based on whatever input or output that's being given. So that's great. Again, continuing on that barrier question, right? Let's think about a small team, a small startup or a small team, whatever that is, right? Now, they are now competing at the level of massive organizations that you talked about, like Microsoft, and who have major investments in this, right? What is the equalizing magic here between these small teams and very well established veteran organizations?
That's a great question, right? So far, if you have to really stand up an advanced analytics stack as a company, you have to really invest on a full-fledged data scientist BI team, where you're talking about economics, like you're talking about nearly 500K to $1 million per year, maybe, to really establish that entire stack. Now, that's not the case anymore. As a startup, what you could actually do is you can make use of several software as a service platform that have Gen AI baked into them. It's like paying for subscriptions. So you can definitely start small. You can bring together a set of tools only based on subscriptions. You can start off with tools that can do data enrichment, for example, data analysis, insights. So you have out-of-the-shelf software as a service products that can help you do all of this for you, all at the cost of a small subscription. So instead of building it in-house, you can work with subscriptions and stitch together a set of tools that can basically build you a product, a working product that your customers can start using. So we're talking about $1 million per annum to a few thousands per annum. And that's definitely breaking the barriers for entry. And in fact, there was a report, again, I always try to understand where we stand. It looks very flashy in terms of, what people say about generative AI, but when you go back and actually see reports on how they are using it and how successful they are, Deloitte recently produced a report where they say 70% of small-scale businesses are, in fact, reporting revenue numbers in par with their peers. Now, this is very promising. That clearly shows that the barriers of entry have collapsed, and small-scale, medium-scale businesses can actually build generative AI products in production just on the basis of subscriptions. And of course, I'm not talking about the operation cost that comes post the deployment. You have to incur the operation cost in terms of paying for tokens and paying for usage post your deployment, and you have to work through all the operational costs, which is similar in both cases. Whether you're building it in-house or buying, you still need to incur the operation cost. The good part is there are several cloud providers who give you stages where you can actually pay as you go, right? You're not paying an upfront cost. You're only paying for what you use. And of course, that could be a fraction of your profit. So that's definitely something that will benefit small scale businesses.
Thank you, Arthi. That's a really key thing, right? That's how we are going to see more innovation, more entrepreneurship, and lower costs also coming through, right? Through these individual initiatives, at some level. Now, again, I know that I need to give the opportunity to everybody, but one question for me for now, right? It's almost like, I was having a discussion with the community recently, right? Every conversation was starting with, well, I know you guys are all big in AI. I don't know AI, right? I think that was the feeling you get from some older members of the community, some newer members of the community. I mean, it was widespread. And I was thinking, what is your thought, Arthi, on the usage of AI almost becoming a universal, right? Whether the geography, it could be metropolitan or urban, wherever that is, right? It doesn't matter. And people can come from different education backgrounds, different financial backgrounds. How do we take it to all the underserved communities?
That's a great question, right? So I think, the plane can be leveled by accessibility and affordability put together, right? That's very important. And that's possible today. So you can integrate Gen AI capabilities into the tools that small businesses use today to run their business. To give you an example, there are several businesses that operate on just WhatsApp. They just use WhatsApp for business for their day-to-day activities. And it is possible to just meet customers where they are. You can actually meet customers using WhatsApp. All you do is you just integrate the Gen AI APIs behind the scene. And integrating it is very less technical. And in fact, there are no code interfaces available. It is beyond language. There are multilingual capabilities available. It is even through voice. So the integration bit and bringing in the Gen AI capabilities into the tools that the users are even used to is becoming a reality. And I think that's the way it's going to improve as well in the coming months and years. And we're going to make sure that even the underserved communities, even the people who are having a small footprint on wherever they are benefiting out of this revolution, and they're making the best out of it.
Thank you, Arthi. And I think, as pioneers, we all have that responsibility as well, like you said, to take it back into our communities.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's it from me for now.
Thanks, Anita.
Okay, so I guess it's my turn to jump in. So my first question, I think we've touched on a bit before, and that is about the real fear that people have about AI replacing their jobs. Arthi, I'm sure you've led digital teams through this kind of transformation. Can you share a little bit about how you see Gen AI actually amplifying the human capability and creativity and brilliance that we have, rather than replacing it? And as part of that, I'd like you to touch on, because I want to make sure we have time for everybody, I'd like you to touch on how we can thrive in the Gen AI era, and what skills are becoming more valuable. And honestly, how do we tackle that imposter syndrome that keeps nipping at our buds, since everything's changing so fast?
Thanks, Jody. I think that's a very common question that comes up in any AI conversation that we are having. I think the shift is not about replacement. It is definitely about augmentation. Of course, there are several reports that have been published where they're claiming that by the end of 2025, 85 million jobs will be displaced through automation. That's the claim. But right next to it, they're also claiming that 97 million new jobs will be introduced into the market too. So if one door is closed, definitely there are several others that are going to be opened. What does that mean? The roles that we are looking forward to in the new era are basically to define roles that are shaping AI. We are looking for expertise that can work alongside AI, that can train the AI, that can validate the AI, that can guide the AI to make it more effective for the humankind. So the new roles that we are looking forward to in the immediate future is definitely to be pairing the human judgment with the AI capability. Now, you can't compete with machines for what they are best at. They are best at doing things at speed, doing the computation at speed, which, we can't compete with them. But AI cannot compete with human judgment. AI cannot compete with our empathy, our intuition, our emotional intelligence. So I think the best thing that can work for us as a humankind with AI in picture is to pair up with machines, work alongside it, and bring in the best of both worlds. In terms of the human skills, I think I would always call 3 important skills from human that cannot be replaced by machines, right? Machines cannot do critical thinking. Machines cannot be creative. Machines lack emotional intelligence. So definitely the trust, the relationship, the creativity to build new things, and critical thinking. We need to be sitting on top of AI. We need to be challenging and asking the right questions on whether the AI is generating the right answers or not. That's where the human input is going to be. And that's where they're going to be really making, a partnership with AI. So it's an augmentation and not a replacement for human in this era.
I saw an article this weekend that people who work on machines in factories were worried that AI was going to take over, and this guy came and said, really, it's the combination of AI and the people together. It's exactly what you said, Arthi, that it just makes the people more efficient and effective. It's like a happy spot. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. And I think the sooner we understand that, and the sooner we sort of, make ourselves comfortable being in that world, the better it is, because we'll be unstoppable by making use of the best of what machines can do and appending to it to what we can do the best that machines cannot.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, Jody, do you have another question? I interrupted you.
Actually, I was going to comment on that. I think you answered that really, really well. I mean, human creativity, a machine can only deliver what is really the thought. I kind of like treat the AI like I call it a level 5 research assistant. Somebody that's pretty smart, has access to a lot of books and all, and knows math pretty well. But I can't expect it to prototype an algorithm for me. I can't find the use case for me. But I do use it a lot to make my presentations look pretty, and to bring all my documents together. And now, the new function in GPT-5, that deep research, takes a long time. But if you've got to cull through lots and lots of documents, it really saves a lot of time. Anyway, thank you.
And we can't compete with it. We can't definitely compete with it with what it is able to do the best. But it can't compete with us too. So it's a partnership.
Right.
Yeah, there's a big fear factor, I think, that is going on right now. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
Jim, did you have a question? I thought for a second that you were trying to say something.
No question. I think all of this is spot on. Of course, I'm applying things to people operations, data security, but I'm so excited for the future. I think I have to agree with all of the data we have that we don't use. I mean, it's really amazing. So thank you for that. That was really interesting.
Sure.
Okay. Joshi?
Oh, I'm going next. I thought, sorry, I apologize, Mary. I thought that you are taking those questions.
I can. I'm good.
I
So,
would appreciate that. Yeah.
so Arthi, Gen AI is making life-changing decisions, loan approvals, medical diagnosis, hiring choices, even determining whether, that whole insurance thing, whether or not somebody's surgery is covered or not, right? So from your perspective, can you walk us through what does a robust AI governance framework look like that ensures both innovation and protection? I think this is like a yin and a yang to the question that Raj Kumar asked earlier.
Yeah, so the governance framework, it's very critical in any AI deployment, right? I would call it as three main categories of governance that we need to bake in. First and foremost, transparency. It is very important to ensure that any AI insight is backed up with complete, clear audit trail, right from the fact of who was training it, what data was used for training, what were the assumptions that were used to even generate that insights. Now that will give us a lot of confidence in terms of basically breaking the black box. So transparency is the first aspect of the governance. The second is the accountability. Now, as we talked about in terms of partnership just in the last conversation, it is very important that we as humans take up the responsibility and the accountability of the final outcome. And we can be supported by all the AI recommendations and all of that that goes behind the scene, but the accountability and the responsibility still lies with the human. So that's important for adoption per se. And finally, last but not the least, to the previous question we had around the security and other aspects, we all know that AI is very probabilistic. It tries to basically figure out patterns and sort of tries to come up with insights. It is also very important for us to establish fairness in the results that we publish at the end. So it's important to have recurrent bias testing as part of our stack. And we have to ensure that AI is pretty fair in terms of what it comes out as fairness. So I would call the governance framework as a three-legged stool with transparency, accountability, and fairness as three main pillars in it. In fact, the adoption rate will drastically improve if we sort of bake in this governance framework for every deployment we do. In fact, there was a recent report from PwC that called out that 76% of customers are not comfortable trusting companies that use AI if they don't publish that they are using bias testing. So it's very important that companies bake in all of these three pillars before they establish their insights for end consumers to use, and that's going to drastically improve the adoption rate. Does that help answer, Muri?
Yeah, hadn't thought of it that way, but that was a good answer. That's really good. So Gen AI can feel like the mysterious black box. It's kind of back to what you said, the visibility into what it is doing in general about our lives. How do we crack it open, ensuring explainability without sacrificing capability? And then, as you've talked before, what role does us humans or do us humans play in this loop?
I think the governance framework of transparency, accountability will be important. And, it is very important that an AI system always pairs the why with the what. Otherwise, it's very difficult for people to accept what it's telling, right? There should be traceability in terms of why it is saying that. For example, you look at, we are actually in the world where you have consumer products that have labels generated through AI. It's actually talking about AI generated labels where it's calling nutritional value for the product, which is generated by AI. And people are, in fact, looking forward to accepting it only because each of those labels are like backed up with the sources, data sources, and the confidence score that the AI had used to even call out that AI in that the AI generated label there as a nutrient value. So I think as humans, we need proof. As long as AI is giving us the why behind the what, I'm sure there will be a lot of adoption of the insight.
Makes sense. Makes a ton of sense.
Thank you, Arthi. I'm going to jump in next with a question of about tomorrow. We talked a lot about today, right? So, as with any new technology, there is always that, how do I put it? The starting trouble followed by the growing troubles, right? So what is there a battle tested roadmap, for any new organization that's entering Gen AI? Something like you start with the foundation, then you go with augmenting, then you scale, right? What would be your recommended roadmap?
Oh, yeah. So that's a very, very, very important question, right? I think from my experience, two things that really worked for us so far in our journey. And we've been into this journey for nearly almost 3 years now. I think the first thing is I would always have the starting point to be the business problem and not the technology. Always start with your business goal on what you want to solve with AI than even looking at the technology to be used. Start with the problem, not the solution, number one. Number two is always start small. Start with a single problem, start small, stay focused in a pilot phase, prove your stack before even boiling the ocean. So it's very important that we pick a high valued use case, a business problem. We work through the end-to-end solution for that one use case in a pilot mode. We stitch together the Gen AI solution. We look at measuring the impact. We look at proving the ROI before even thinking of scaling it. Now, I think that is a very tested path that has worked for us, and we've been very successful doing that for our company. And in fact, there was a BCG report that aligns to what I just said. Right, there is a BCG report that claimed that any company that starts with just the pilots before going into full scale, they are 3x times highly successful for ending up with higher adoption than the ones that don't. So I think these are the two mantras that can help any organizations that is just thinking to start in Gen AI journey.
Yeah, that's amazing, Arthi. You literally led me to my next question with that ROA statement. How do we quantify success, right? I mean, like any new investment like this, we face the same thing when doing the CDP, right? Yes, it's a massive investment. Yes, we are seeing results, but is ROI the only point of success, right? How is our better decisions one of the KPIs? What's your thought on that, Arthi?
I think we need to establish a measurement framework, Sangeeta. I think that's something that we learned even, as you said, in the CDP journey and several other deployments we have done. Start with the problem, solve it, but more importantly, understand the measurement framework, right? From a Gen AI point of view, I think I would define it as a 4-quadrant measurement framework. The first quadrant, of course, is the finance. Everybody's interested in the money. So make sure that you have the finance quadrant defined, you are tracking the ROI, you're measuring the impact and all that. That's definitely the first quadrant. Second quadrant in the context of AI is the time. What is the time to insight? How many hours are you saving by introducing AI into your analysis, right? The second quadrant is the time. The third quadrant is, of course, the quality. Is your AI even producing results that is making sense to your end users, right? How do you measure that, right? And the fourth quadrant, the most important quadrant, I think it is something new in the AI world, is the human quadrant. It is very important to make sure that you measure the adoption, you measure the customer experience, you measure the satisfaction, right? I think adoption rate, how many non-analysts are actually making use of your AI is very critical. And I think that's very new to this world. So I would put it as a 4-quadrant, right? The fourth quadrant being human, which is very important for our case.
That's amazing, Arthi. It's, and that's the right time to bring it up too. There is another platform within Informa, right? And last week when we were having a conversation with them, they were like, we are using Alicia. And we were like, oh, really, you are? Again, for others on the call, Alicia's Informa's proprietary tool, and Arthi is one of the major creators, contributors in the project. So anyway, that's really insightful, Arthi, because nothing is a success without that human factor, right? And building that adoption is the key that we need to focus on from day one, not after we build the product. Yeah. Anyway, with that, not sure, Jody, I know you had a few questions asked.
Yeah, so I think we're coming to the top of the hour, so I'm going to combine them, but I just want to make one comment on the last section. That was my favorite section, Arthi, because implementation and execution go hand in hand, and you summarized it so nicely that I actually wrote it down and probably will use it in a presentation that I'm developing now. I should say thank you for making my job a little easier. So we're talking about the future, right? And here we are, we're at the intersection of human creativity and artificial intelligence. And I've been, around the rodeo multiple years, and I've seen how women have played the role that women have played. And in the beginning, it was quite difficult. And now things are a little bit better. How could we specifically as women not just play in this arena, and not just participate, but actually drive and lead the Gen AI revolution?
Oh, women, we are queens everywhere. There's no doubt about it. And we have traits that Gen AI can never have. As I highlighted that in a previous conversation in one of the previous questions, I think we are the best with empathy. We are the best with intuition. We just see beyond numbers and we go to the human effect. And I think that's something Gen AI can never do. We are, collaborators. We can actually think. We can actually have the emotions to, have that, the final edge to actually meet our end customers. And I think that's something Gen AI can never do. So I think as women, we have a lot to play in this new era. And as I pointed out earlier, it's going to be a partnership with the machines, and there's no other human other than women who can actually bridge the gap of that partnership in terms of augmenting AI. And we have a lot to do in this era.
Yeah. So now I changed my mind. I think maybe that was the most profound statement that I heard today. I think that's absolutely true. The empathy and the EI, that's where we excel. So thank you very much for that. And finally, if everyone here in this room does just one thing differently after our conversation, what should that thing be in order to move along on our journey through Gen AI transformation? One thing.
I think the call to action for me would be just be curious. I think we need to lead with curiosity because Gen AI just thrives on curiosity. And as I already said, we are going to be losers if you're going to keep competing with machines. We need to be thinking on a level higher that machines can never reach. So I think that's the one call to action. We need to ask the right questions. So I think we are no longer women in big data. We are women that's actually leading smart data. So the question is not about whether you are ready for generative AI. The question is whether generative AI is ready to answer the question you're going to ask. So be inquisitive, be curious, and let's ask the machines the way you generally do, right? Let's be curious and ask the right questions, and we'll be successful.
Thank you very much, Arthi. Thank you very much for this. This was a great session as far as I'm concerned. I'm coming away with lots of learnings. So who's closing?
Thanks for having me. It was a wonderful session with all of you. Very insightful questions. Thanks for putting that together, and I loved this conversation. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Arthi. You killed it. Great quotes. Jody cheated before I did, but some of this is going to my blog. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It was a wonderful conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.